I have
You Testament base?
Testament base.
You Testament base, yeah. Okay. Interesting Gemara tonight. More or less the same as the Bavlis. I looked up the Bavlis, more or less the same as the Bavli these Yerushalmis. A mafat is somebody who seduces, gives three things. Those are not knas, but boshes. He gives knas. He does give knas. He doesn't give tsar. There's no tsar involved. Okay, so mafat is shlosh bosh. What? Well, ripu. You're assuming there's no ripu in either case. That's why it's shlosh and arbar dvarim, not arbar of chamisha dvarim, because ripu is not part of the issue. Mafat is shlosh dvarim, which are the knas, the boshes and pgam. We're talking about to the father here. V'ones arba, which includes also tsar. Hamafat noisin boshes pgam knas. Most of the v'ones shu noisin es tsar gives the tsar as well. Hamafat eiron noisin es tsar. The mafat does not give tsar. Haones noisin miyad. The ones gives immediately because he gives it before the marriage. Mafat shiotzi only if he divorces. Otherwise, he doesn't have to give the knas. Ones shotebatzitzo. The ones he has to drink in his cup, meaning even though it's repugnant, meaning he can never divorce her. If he wants to divorce, he may divorce. He's entitled to do so. Says look, Rabbi Shimon. This is not like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon potter so ones minatzar. Rabbi Shimon, very very pragmatic man. He exempted an ones from tsar, from a payment of tsar as well. He says, what is this analogous to? Somebody cuts off his friend's wart. Anyway, it's going to come off. So I cut off a few days early. But she would have to lose her basulim eventually and have the tsar eventually when she got married anyway. So he says, I did you a favor. I took care of it now. Right? What's it like? Somebody cuts down his friend's plantings. And anyway, they're going to be cut down later on. Right? On Mulos, they said, nah, it's not comparable. You can't compare somebody who was where she acquiesced to a case where she was compelled to do so. But furthermore, very interesting statement. It's not in the Bavli, these statements. There's no comparison between somebody who was compelled to have relations in the city dumpling, somebody who actually went through, chuppah and kiddushin before it. Indeed, what does Rabbi Shimon do with the fact that it says in Pasuk? It's because he tortured her. So it sounds like there's torture involved in onus, right? So what does he do with that concept of torture? Let's explain that. When it happened, when he raped her in a place where it was particularly unpleasant. In other words, they were out in some conditions which added on to the tsar. So that tsar, even Rabbi Shimon agrees. So it's the tsar peripheral, which is unnecessary, that you have to pay. But the tsar, which is inherent in losing the psulim, that he doesn't have to pay for. That's a machlokas between him and Rabbana. Okay? V'amafata kshiyotzi. The mafata pays when he divorces. When is that? Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda said it's not necessarily if he divorces. Now, do you remember Rav Chisda appearing in the Yerushalmi before?
Actually, now you mention it, no.
No, I don't remember him appearing. Not only do we have not only do I not remember Rav Chisda appearing, but next page on Chaf and Beis we are actually going to see Rava.
We had Rava.
We had Rava,
Yeah.
where they didn't change it.
The name Rava appears in the text.
Yeah, no, we had Rava, but they've changed it mostly. But here nobody changed it. Rava named Rav Chisda. So I don't know how it got in here. I don't think I really don't remember having Rav Chisda before. So
Rav Huna was his contemporary.
yeah, but there's Rav Huna. In the Yerushalmi it's Rav Huna. It's not Rav Huna. It's not the same Rav Huna necessarily as Bavel. It's Rav Huna and Eretz Yisrael. I think maybe you're right. Maybe the real Rav Huna does get in a couple of times too. But I don't remember ever seeing Rav Chisda before. It's in the fact it doesn't mean he divorces her. It means if he doesn't want to marry her now also, right? The Mefata has the option. He doesn't have to marry her. An onus must marry. Mefata need not marry, but then he has to pay the fine. So it's either the fine or the marriage. The onus, it's both the fine and the marriage, right? So I'm again, I'm Rav Chisda b'shlo ratzol l'kaim, avim ratzol l'kaim, but if he wants to wants to marry her, ain't no noisy klum, he doesn't have to pay. Tani Rabbi Shmuel. Shmuel said, Kesef yishkol k'mora hapsulos. It says that the father gets money like the mohar, which is obviously a term which is similar, analogous, but not precisely the same as ksuva. Magid shuosa osan olav mohar. It means that the mefata makes upon himself his knas like a mohar, meaning like a ksuva. Vein mohar el ksuva. Mohar is prefers to ksuva. Kamadat Amar, like it says, Harbu alai mod mohar matan. Shchem ben Chamor, when he wanted to marry Dina, said to Yaakov and his kids, whatever mohar you ask me to give, I'll give. So we see here that the kesef, which a mefata is supposed to pay, becomes a ksuva. And this really is the makor of ksuva in the Torah. I mean, even though the ksuva is not the raisa, but we see here an allusion to the concept of ksuva. Because here the mefata, his knas, he doesn't pay right away, but rather he makes it, if he marries her, the ksuva for later on. Which is an interesting thing, and it's going to have a practical ramification now. And maybe even the Yerushalmi holds ksuva is deraisa. The truth is, this point I didn't didn't look into when I looked into the Bavli today. Maybe actually Yerushalmi holds ksuva is deraisa, because look at the next Gemara. I don't think so. We couldn't kvetch out of it. But here it says, Rabbi Lezer Shah, Rabbi Lezer's question, Benos anusa ma'u shelem b'tnai ksuvasa. This is a fascinating question. When a woman is raped, she doesn't have a ksuva. Not because she doesn't deserve a ksuva, but because the knas is instead of the ksuva. So the knas the father gets immediately is instead of the ksuva. And even the Rabban doesn't have a ksuva, because the reason why Rabbanan made a ksuva is shalote kala bein of lotzia. Right? That it shouldn't be easy, if there's a deterrent, that it shouldn't be easy to divorce your wife. But an ones is not allowed to divorce his wife anyway. So he doesn't need the deterrent, it's a lav. If he divorces his wife, we're going to flog him. So therefore, ein l'cha deterrent gadol mizeh, it would be superfluous to add on a ksuva to that. So he doesn't have a ksuva, she doesn't have a ksuva, the victim. So the question is, do her daughters get fed by the husband? Because the halacha is that abonos nizonos is part of the Tanai Ksuva, right? But non nukvan the heavy lechamin, you have a lech minoi, you have on mitzvah on minchosai v'yasim v'beisi. I forget the exact language. We don't write into the Ksuva anymore, but it's a Tanai Ksuva. So Shiloh, when Rabbanan made a takana like that, a Tanai Ksuva, does that apply even if there is no Ksuva? Okay? By the daughter of Anusa, by the woman who's Anusa, there's no ksuva. Does she still have the alukata of Tanai ksuva? That's what the Gemara Shiloh is here. Okay, so it says b'nos Anusa ma'ushi elohen ksuva v'lohem Tanai ksuva. So now the next Gemara, top of Chafanav till the Mishnah, is really messed up, and the Ridbaz makes him try, coaxes it until he makes it work according to the gears in front of us. But rather than take it, use the Ridbaz, I'm going to take the easy way out and go like the Gilin Ephraim who changes things here. Okay? He says the way it should be is like follows. Pshitali. And he says really it should say from here on in, it's not Rabbi Lezer speaking, it's the Gemara, it should be Pshitale. It's Pasha to Rabbi Lezer. Now here it should be instead of Banusa to lace, it should be B'mefuta. The woman who's seduced, the east, not the lace. The east, La Banin Dichrin. Even though the knas becomes the ksuva, right? The ksuva and knas are synonymous. That in of itself suffices to be considered a ksuva, right? So pshitali. Good evening. Being engaged is not an excuse to be late.
No, I was right to a dinner.
There's certain chasanim who. There's certain chasanim who once they become engaged, till they get married, their learning goes into a sharp decline. Some of them never recover from that.
The first line is almost exactly what Byron told me when I got engaged.
Yeah.
Scary.
What?
That's why I had to go to a lunch at the yeshiva. They used to give a Rosh Chodesh lunch, hot dogs and beans every month. So he said, you got to get stuff doesn't excuse you from going to the Rosh Chodesh lunch. That's
Well, tomorrow I have to
That's what I said.
dinner.
Okay.
great memories.
Where are we?
What, the Rosh Chodesh, the lunches?
Yeah.
Okay, so she went on top of Chaf Amud Aleph. You weren't here yesterday either.
Oh, that's true.
The opera yesterday. Does she go through the opera?
What?
Does your fiance go through the opera?
Yeah, she likes it.
Okay.
So I took my daughter yesterday.
Pshita, no, you went ahead. One back.
Oh,
Chaf Amud Aleph. Okay.
Okay.
So pshitali, now we're reading from the top of the page, but we're going to change around the words a little bit. Pshitali, it's simple to him, to Rabbi Lezer. It says banusa de leis, but the Gilin Ephraim changes to mefuta de is. Okay? Then mefuta de isla banim dichrin. Now mefuta, a woman who's seduced before marriage, so she gets her ksuva is a contingency. She either gets a ksuva, her ksuva is actually, not a contingency, it's the wrong word I used. Her ksuva is her fine. But the Torah says that if he refuses to marry her, he has to pay a fine to her father. If he agrees to marry her, then the fine reverts to a ksuva, and if and when he divorces her, he has to pay her the ksuva, which is the fine, which was now put at the end of the marriage. So for all intents and purposes, nowadays we give all women a ksuva, and so a woman seduced before marriage has no advantage, no real additional payments to her beyond any woman who gets a ksuva at the end of a marriage, right? But in the old days, before Takana the Rabban of Ksuva, must be the Yerushalmi holds Ksuva the Rabban as well. Before Takana the Rabban of Ksuva, it was only this woman who was seduced who had this Ksuva coming to her at the end of a marriage. But since she has a Ksuva coming to her, so therefore she has all of the Tanoim of Ksuva, all of the parameters which we put into the ksuva itself, even though her ksuva is different than her normal ksuva. For example, she has the isla banim dichrin. She's got the condition which we put into ksuva that if she dies first before her husband, her children will inherit, her male children will inherit whatever property she has and won't go to her husband's children. And the Gilin Ephraim also takes out the next word b'mefuta, and he changes the word after that to the is instead of the lace. And the way he read that is the isla bananukvan. Also, she's got the parameter of ksuva, which we spoke about a few minutes ago, which is that her daughters get fed by her husband. Okay? Now, so Rabbi Lezer only asked the question, Rabbi Lezer's question was that by Anusa, what's her status? Because Anusa, a woman who's raped, does not have a ksuva. So what's her status? So it says the Gemara here, why do you have to, it's obvious that they didn't ask the question by Anusa, because in Tamar Tarveil, because he didn't have an issue by it. Because in Tamar Tarveil and Tzricholah, were he to have had an issue by both of them, Nisho, Benos Anusa, Benos Afutamau. We should have asked, what's the status with the daughters of a woman who's raped and the daughters of a woman who's seduced? Sheish Levit Tnai Ksuva. Do they have Maushish and Ksai Ksuvas? Do they get supported because that's one of the clauses in the Ksuva? Had he had the issue by both the woman who's raped and the woman who's seduced, he would have asked by both. So it says more, therefore, must be Hein de Tzrichole Karabonin. He asked the question which he had difficult, which is according to Rabbanan. Meaning Rabbanan hold that Anusa has no ksuva. A woman who's raped has no ksuva because her fine is given to her at the beginning, so she gets nothing at the end. So then, according to them, according to Rabbanan, he has a question, Taka, does she have all the benefits of the conditions which he write into the ksuva, even though she doesn't get an actual ksuva? So, Hein de Pshitale, however, he would not have such question. In other words, it would be simple to him, the answer, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda worried to learn like Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. The time Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ha'ones nosing ksuvas mana. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even in case of rape, there's a ksuva of $100. So that ksuva, which is, if once there's a ksuva, so all the conditions we peg into a ksuva are automatically attached to that ksuva. According to Rabbi Lezer, he would never have asked this question, Rabbi Lezer. Lezer asked this question specifically according to Rabbanan, who hold that there is no ksuva for a rape victim. So even then, the question is only on a rape victim, not on a woman who's seduced. Because a woman who's seduced, it's true her ksuva is different than our ksuva. And that regular ksuva is a takana d'Rabbanan, whereas her ksuva is the removal of the potential fine which she had at the beginning of the marriage and placing it when the marriage, if and when the marriage terminates. But nonetheless, that's considered to be a sufficient ksuva to peg all the conditions normally attached to a ksuva to it, right? The question is, what about a woman who's a anusa? Does she have a t'nai ksuva? And we never really answered the question. We just left it dangling. We don't know if she does or does not. Okay? Says the Mishnah further. If you raped a woman, how does he drink in his cup? Meaning, afilu chigeres, even if she's lame, afilu hi suma, if she's blind, afilu hi mukashchin, even if she's a leper. Pick some woman to rape. So nevertheless, he has to say, stay married to her forever. Nimtza ba davar zima, what if you find out, however, that she was a licentious woman, and she was supposed to have, she had some psul, or she'enriya v'lavovi, so she's not suitable to come to the Jewish nation, eino rashai l'kaimah. He's not allowed to marry her. Shneimar, it says, or not allowed to keep her as a wife. Shneimar, v'lo siel isha, to him she shall be so, to a wife. The word lo is superfluous. Well, how do we learn the word lo? Isha, she ru'uya lo, it's got to be a woman who's suitable for him. Okay, Rabbi and Rabbi Chia b'shem Rabbi Lakish. Rabbi and Rabbi Chia both said name Rabbi Lakish. Lo yomar v'lo siel isha. It says lo siel isha twice in Torah. At least twice. It says it once in by Oines, right? By the case of a rape, and it says another time by Motzi Shemra. By a man who was married, who was already married, and he lied and said his wife was not a psula. Then we find him, he has to get flogged, he has to pay $100. And it says there, V'lo siel isha, she shall continually be his wife, lo yuchal l'shachal kol yomav, he can never divorce her. Now there, of course, the concept of Lo siel isha is very funny, right? The usage is very funny because it's already his wife. Lo siel isha means she should become his wife, but they're already married, right? That was the whole point. And so that's what we're going to pick up now. And that the Gemara is going to pick up now. Rabbi Yerushalmi Kesuvos said, Lo yamar v'lo siel isha. It should be bim motzi shemra, not zeh motzi shemra, but bim motzi shemra. Let it not say that she should be his wife by motzi shemra, the person who spoke ill. Said lashon, well, not lashon, it was motzi shemra, to claim that his wife was not a psula. Sheina tzvarach. It's not a necessary statement. Kfari tachas yado. She's already underneath him. She's already his wife. Umatam lomar v'lo siel isha. What is it? So why does it say lo siel isha? Learn it from it, a gzeira shava, parallel to our case, and to make a drasha. V'lo siel isha, v'lo siel. This way it says lo siel isha over here, it says v'lo siel over there. Ma lo siel shenamar lahalon. Well, just like lo siel, which it says over here by a woman who's an anuso, was his victim. So here it's talking about isha shuruyolo. I'm sorry. No, wrong. Sorry. Lo siel, it's the other way around. Over there, where the marriage, we're talking about Motzu Shemra. There, we're talking about isha shuruyolo, because the assumption was the chuppah and kiddusha were done kedin. It's already post-marriage. So therefore, our assumption is that was a proper marriage, right? So just like over there talking about after a proper marriage, right? The Rav checked up, she was suitable level of the call, everything was okay. And then afterwards, things went awry, but the marriage was proper. Losia Shenemar Kansul to Losia, which it says over here, said you must marry the woman after you raped her. So it's also only if it's an Isha Ruyalo, right? So if that's the case, Imal Halan Isha Ruyalo, Umishalim Knas. So maybe I'll say, Imal Isha Ruyalo, Imal Isha Ruyalo, Mishalim Knas. If over here, it's the moti Yeah, the Motzi Shemra. There's only a knas by Isha Ruyalo, right? Because we're talking about a case where he married a woman which is suitable for him, and in that case he has to pay the father $100 for having said bad things about his wife, right? So also over here, no mar, right? Maybe also over here, the only time you pay a fine for having raped a girl is if she was suitable for you. But if you took a girl who was not suitable for you, so maybe in fact not only you exempt from marrying her, maybe you exempt from the fine. Maybe you don't even pay for it. So it says Amara, Rabbi Zira Ula B'Shem Rishmo B'Shem Lezer said Lo Yomar V'Lo Sieh B'Motzi Shemra. No, the way we learn is like this. It didn't have to say V'Lo Sieh that she should be his wife B'Motzi Shemra Sheino Tzarich. That because not necessary. Should cry it out because she's already with him. Matam Lo V'Lo Sieh Lisha. Why does it say that she should be for he will be for her? She will be for him a wife. Malame men Shava Midrasha. So he dashes Shava. V'Lo Sieh. The Lo Sieh over there and Lo Sieh over here. Ma Lo Sieh Shneim Alal, just like the Lo Sieh, which is mentioned subsequently by the person who raped. Giresh, if he divorced, Omer Lo Shiachzir, right? We say, no, by Motzi Shema, sorry. If he divorced, we say, take her back, right? Because obviously that's the import of Lo Sieh Lisha. If you divorce her, take her back. Af Lo Sieh Murkan, so to the Lo Sieh, which is mentioned over here by a case where you raped a girl, Giresh, if you divorced her, Omer Lo Shiachzir, we say take it back. So the bottom line is, we could have learned that it has to be a proper wife from Yerushalmi Motzi Shemra. But the flaw in that ointment would have been that if we would have learned it from Motzi Shemra, they would have also assumed that you only pay the knas, you only pay the fine of whatever money you find when the woman is a potential marriage mate, which she's suitable to be married to. And this we do not want to say, because we want to have him paying the fine regardless of whether he can marry this woman or not. And in fact, therefore, in our mission, we learned that Isha Ruyalo, it's got to be a woman who's suitable for him to marry from the word lo internally. Because it says lo siel Isha, right? And that word teaches us that the extra word lo to him teaches us that it'd be a woman who's suitable for him. And we don't extrapolate from anywhere else in determining what the levels of payment are. Since we don't have to extrapolate from the Gzeir Shava this issue, so we do not. What do we extrapolate from the Gzeir Shava, from the parallel? We extrapolate that if you did divorce her, we don't say, b'di'evet, okay, she's divorced, what can you do? But rather, if you divorce her, we tell you to take her back. Okay? Now, echad ones, ve'echad motzi shema shagir, Tana Rabbi Chia said, echad ones, ve'echad motzi shema, regardless of whether it's a case of rape or a case where he said bad things about his wife, shagir shu, if they divorce, kohen osel and make him take her back. But what about imayu kohanim? Right, a Kohen who divorced is allowed to take his wife back? Kohen who divorced.
Oh, no.
He's not allowed to take her back. So what do we do to him? We flog him. You call him something that's our boy. We flog him because he can't take her back. Right? Period. Now here it says Kahada Datani, and Ribaz tries to make it work it out. But if you see the length of Ribaz, it's not really worth it. So it's just the other Achronim change it to Tani. Tani means that there's a new statement. Okay, it's not a continuation, it's a new statement. Tani. Bulas Baal. It says that the halacha is that a woman is a Nara Basula. She's under 12 now, she's a Basula. And if somebody, and she's Murasa, she's Afiyan, she's very betrothed. So somebody has relations with her is Chayav what? Nara Murasa.
You have to marry her.
No, she's already betrothed to somebody.
Oh, she's already betrothed.
So what penalty does the guy get? What death? Which death? You got 4 kinds.
Not skila?
Skila.
Yeah.
He had stoned. However, the moment she gets married, it goes down to chenek, goes down to suffocation, goes down 3 notches. So while she's still betrothed, only kiddushin, it's skila. The moment she goes there, the moment she goes down 3 notches, the moment she gets married, she goes down 3 notches. The chenek, she used goods already. So the shaila is, what happens if she has, if she hasn't yet had nisuin, she hasn't yet gotten married, but she had relations already. She already had relations. So what's the status of the next guy with her?
She's not Kiddushin or anything?
She had kiddushin,
Yeah,
but not nisuin. But that's what we're going to discuss.
Okay.
So Tani, Pulas Baal, Lohavis and Makabelas Baal of Beis Avia. If she had relations with her husband before she was actually had nisuin, she was still just betrothed, right?
Okay.
But she had relations with her husband via Rusa, and even though she's still in Arusa, she's still technically only kiddushin, not nisuin. Haboachra bechenek. The next guy to have relations with her, now who's not her husband, only gets chenek. He only gets suffocated. He doesn't get actually skila. Philosoph dovar kikatarka. Now here says a very interesting distinction. Actually, I don't remember this. I didn't see this in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. Philosoph dovar. It's not just kedarka. If he has relations with her kedarka, her husband has relations with her kedarka. Even if it's not in normal fashion. So technically, you can still hold she's a basula. But nonetheless, she already has a shame. She's entered the classification of a bulas baal, right? Because they had relations, even if it's not in normal fashion. Bulas baal, woman who was husbanded already. So therefore, there's no skill in that case, right? Rabbi Vobisher Yochim said, "Lachein tzricha." For this purpose, we need this pasuk for shalo kedarka. Why is this? Because it says here afilu, but should really be in. The carbonator changes it because in tema, if you're going to say in tema is like im tomer. If you're going to say mikedarka, that's say about having a religious normal fashion. Lomali bala. Why her husband? Afilu is the word missing. It should be afilu acher. Even somebody else. In other words, if Bulas Baal is just trying to tell us that after she had relations, she was no longer. It's the second time around. The second guy to be mezana with her, to have a list of relations, or only gets chenek, only gets suffocated. For that, the pasuk deserves no yasher koyach. That's pashut. She's not a basula anymore, right? The chiddush of the pasuk says Rabbi Yochanan must be a case where it was bia shalo kedarka, where it was a different way, different manner of bia. And therefore she still remains a psula. And the chiddush is that even in that case, the next guy to come along only gets chenek. Now this, however, is only true about her husband. That's what the Gemara is about to say. If her husband has relations with her shalo kedarka, then the next guy to come and be mezana with her gets chenek. But if somebody else has relations with her shalo kedarka, right, then the next guy to come after him gets still skila. Because the unique thing that she's downgraded by having had relations with her husband, with her fiance, right? So says the Gemara, normally could kai the tiyatah like learned over there. Bo'les, this is brought out of the Bible. Bo'les shnai, 2 guys had relations with her, two far strangers, not her husband, right? Harishim is skila, first guy gets skila, first guy gets stoned. Vasheni bechenek. Right, the second guy gets chenek because even though the first guy was her husband, but he downgraded her from skila to chenek because she's no longer basula, right? Now the cases get fun. Naramurasa, a woman who's affianced or betrothed, actually is the right word. 10 guys have relations with her in the improper way, right? The last guy, or the 11th guy, has it the proper way. Kulam b'skila. They're all 10 get stoned. All of them, because she never became, she remained a psula after each one, and none of them was her husband, that we should give her the technical status of bulas baal, right, that she's been husbanded already. So therefore, they all get skila, because they're all having relations with a girl who's a psula, who's betrothed. So says the Gemara, however, of course, there's all the brisa, actually, kulo kidarka, if they all had relations with the normal way, then a rishon b'skila, first guy gets skila, right? Because he obviously was the one to make the difference. He wanted to have relations with the psula. Vashar, the next 9 guys, so they only had relations with a woman who's already Pula, already was no longer psula. So therefore they get chenek, they get only suffocation. Now, same idea. Heruba asar b'nei adam is really a partial bia, one which doesn't break the psulim, right? So heruba asar b'nei adam, 10 people had partial bia with her. Ve'echad gamar bia, and one of them completed the bia. Kulam b'skila, they all get skila, right? Every one of them, because nobody broke the psulim, so she's still a psula, right? Kulam gamru sabia, but if they all completed the bia, so Rishon b'skila, the first guy, he broke the psulim, he gets skila. V'ashar b'chenek, and the rest of the other 9, all they get is suffocation. We let them off the hook easy. Okay? Now, of course, it goes without saying that till now we were talking about women who are betrothed, they're already quasi-married. What about a woman who's a pnuya, a woman who's still single? A pnuya, ba'al asar shlo kadarka, 10 people have relations with her, not in the proper way. Ve'echad kadarka, and one in the proper way. Kulan b'knas, they all have to pay the money to the father. Because to each one the father says, hey, you raped my daughter who's still a psula. Because they all had relations, shelo kadarka. So actually this would be a very profitable venture. The father would have get a lot of knas that way, right? Rishon b'knas, however, kulam b'kadarka, if they all had relations with the normal way, so Rishon b'knas, the first guy pays knas. Why? Because obviously he's the one who made her no longer psula. But Ashar Potter, the rest of the guys, they're Potter because they're no longer having relations with the psula, and you only pay money if you rape a psula, not if you rape a woman who's already had relations. Bir lo echamem. Now here's a fascinating part of this Gemara, really fascinating. I'm going to learn this like Bnei Moshe. Bnei has a totally different way of learning it. But Bnei Moshe says, what's the halacha if a guy rapes a girl? He's got to marry her, right? So here she's got 10 choices.
I thought you only have to marry her if she's under a home.
She's under 12 and a half, yeah. So she's got 10 choices, right? Because they all are candidates to marry her because they all had relations with her when she's a psula. So what's their status? So Bir lo echamem, she says, Daddy, I want this one. Niftaru kulam milosa said, then all the rest of them are exempt from the law of lo yichol l'shachol kol yomov. They've all been left off the hook. They don't have to marry her, nor they transgress the prohibition and they divorce her. Yeah, that's what it says here.
I know that's what it says.
This Saitak also remember from the Bible. She didn't do enough research today. What? Yeah, she gets to choose. What would you say?
I don't know. I would say the first one.
Why? But they're all paying knas.
I understand. They all pay knas.
Yeah. It's just Baal Batish anyway, right?
It just seems like the most logical. It's like,
no, I think it's much more logical to say she gets to choose. It's to her advantage.
Yeah, it's to her advantage.
So,
she get advantage for it?
So she suffered enough. She chooses one of them. However, the thing is they're not off the hook forever. It should be efshar, not efshar. So it should be efshar. Said, you know what, Daddy? Changed my mind. I don't like this one. I want another one. So the other guy is stuck. Boreres v'choseres u'boreres. She can choose and change her mind and choose another guy. So it's all right. Right? What?
I guess so.
So therefore, they're not. None of them are completely off the hook until she makes her final choice and actually marries one of them. Now, let's say one of them, the guy who raped her was already married to her sister, right? And of course he can't marry her, right? So Kvar Niftar, then he's off the hook. This is a very interesting dispensation. A guy who raped his sister-in-law, so see, there's no you can't say lo yishchol l'shalcha about him. Why? Because he's not allowed to marry her. So he's tak off the hook. The law doesn't apply to him. And what happens, even if his own wife, Mesa, She dies afterwards, in which case now she can marry the victim, right? Because she can't marry the victim as long as his own wife is alive. But once his own wife dies, so let him marry the victim. Now we say kfar niftar. Already he's off the hook. Once he's off the hook, at the time of the rape, since he wasn't chayiv to marry her, you can't, that chayiv does not devolve upon him later on. Unlike the 10 first guys, right? There, each one had the potential to be chayiv. We're waiting for to choose which one. So then each one can be chayiv in turn. But here in this case, at the time of the rape, he had no possibility of being chayiv because he was married to the woman's sister. So therefore he remains exempt from this chiyuv for all time. Now, mace, what if the, it's a very interesting case. What happens if again, the Korban learns this case differently, but I'm learning like Pnei Moshe. The guy Taka married her. The guy who raped her married her. But then he died.
Oh.
He died. So that, and she's childless.
Right.
So there should be a lach of yibum, right?
Right.
Meis enkov is yavam. We do not make the yavam be miyabim. In other words, we make the husband marry her because it says lo siel isha, right? But the yavam doesn't have, and he's not allowed to ever divorce her. But the yavam doesn't fall that obligation. You might say the yavam, the chiyuv of the mitzvah of lo siel isha, that he must be married to her, and the lo yuchal shachal kol yavam, you can't divorce her, transfers from the dead husband to his brother. Just like the marriage itself the potential marriage itself transfers, it doesn't. And the brother has the right to refuse to be miyabim. Okay? Okay, a girl who was betrothed, then was divorced, and then was raped. If somebody seduces, somebody rapes her, they're chayiv to pay. But somebody rapes her, they're chayiv to pay. Somebody seduces her, if it's consensual, potter is exempt from paying. Which makes sense, but the Gemara is going to attack it nonetheless with great severity. Rabbi Yochanan said, Asid Rabbi Lezer b'shitas Rabbi Akiva Rabbi. Rabbi Lezer goes like Rabbi Akiva's Rabbi. How so? K'mar Rabbi Akiva amar yesh lo knas. Rabbi Akiva says a girl has a knas. A knas alatzma. And her knas comes to herself. Now this is talking about, earlier in the parak we had a case where a girl was betrothed and divorced. Her father has no jurisdiction over her anymore. So Rabbi Akiva holds that she gets a knas. If somebody rapes her, she gets a knas, and her knas goes to herself. Rabbi Yosef holds there's no knas. There's only knas if the father has the right to it. There's no knas which she has the right to. So our mission is going like Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Akiva says she's got a knas goes to herself. Can't Rabbi Lezer yesh lo knas? Rabbi Lezer says she has a knas, knas goes to herself. And that's why there's a dichotomy between oines, where she gets a knas because she was raped, and mefate, seduction. Seduction, after all, she agreed to consenting adults. So therefore, what should she get out of it? Now, till now the Gemara is easy. Now the Gemara gets hard. Says the Gemara, Me'ato, and I'm going to learn this word like the Shai Torah says, nobody knows exactly what's going on here, but I'm going to try and make it work. Says the Gemara, Me'ato afilu b'mefuta. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. Rabbi Akiva said before that the knas goes to her. If she was divorced, she was betrothed and divorced, so the knas goes to her. Who gets the boshus b'gam? Remember the 3 payments. There's knas, the fine, and there's boshes, the embarrassment, the shame, and b'gam, her lesser worth. She's worthless. She can't be married off for the same amount of money. Who gets the boshus b'gam? So says the Shai Torah. So the premise of our Gemara is that Rabbi Akiva still holds the boshus b'gam goes to who? The father. The father suffers the embarrassment, and the father loses the capacity to marry off to somebody else, right? Or loses some of his capacity to marry off to somebody else. Remember, after a father marries off a daughter only with kiddushin, and then her husband dies, she can go back, and her father can marry off again. The only time the father loses the right to marry off is if she got nisuin. She went all the way. then her father loses the right. But if she only got Erusin and then was divorced, he still has the right to marry off. So therefore, Akiva would hold the Boshas Pagam go to the father, because he's the one who's losing. It's embarrassment for the family, and the Pagam in her kid's capacity to sell it to the next highest bidder. So says more, Gemara Me'ato, Afilu ben Futa. Let the Boshas Pagam go to her father in Mefuta in the case of seduction as well. And it sounds like from a mission for Rabbi Eliezer, says, the onus chayiv, Patur, that he's Patur in Gansen. He's Patur altogether. It said, Patur shemacholo. So Gemara says, he is the name of Eliezer. She was Meichel the Boshas Pagam. She said, she fell so much in love with this man that she was Meichel. There's more, what? How could she be Meichel? It's the father's Boshas Pagam. She has no right to be Meichel, her father's Boshas Pagam. But Allah be Soima. So Rabbi Yirmiyah answers, or whoever gave the answer, it's not clear who gave the answer. Rabbi Yirmiyah, let's say it's Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, our Mishnah is talking about a Yisoma, a woman who's an orphaness. The tiny base Rabbi Cain, how Yisoma are talking about an orphaness. And she's an orphaness, so therefore, if she potters the guy, he's taken off the hook on all three things. Why is that? Because she has no father who's over her in jurisdiction that the father should get the Boshas Pagam. Now let's go back to the Mishnah itself. It says the Mishnah quote, there's a quote from Mishnah, Rav Lezer is chayav on Fata Potter, the rapist is chayav, the seducer is Potter. Again, V'yesho dam moichel dov v'sheinu b'shuso. Now here's a very interesting question. It really is a very lumbish question. What does it mean? It means she's moichel the knas, right? She's moichel in the knas. When does the guy become chayav to pay knas? When does it become chayav to pay the fine?
The time of the rape.
That would be the non-trick answer. Obviously, it's a trick answer. I'm asking the question. If you give the obvious answer, obviously the question wasn't a valid question. So when does it become chayav to pay a fine? Halachically, when do you become chayav to pay a fine?
When you do damage.
No, that's when you pay.
That's damages.
That's damages.
When you cross the law, whatever you do.
No. When you go to court.
Oh.
That's why I might have a knas pot if somebody gets to court before the Adam comes and says, I did it.
Oh, then
he's
they
exempted.
He
doesn't have to pay the knas, because the knas only comes chayav at the time of the court.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, in the yeshivas, we came with this idea, which really will be indicated by the Yerushalmi later on, that it really, mikanu lahabo l'mafreya, that from the time the court imposed upon you, it works retroactively as well.
Oh.
But the Gemara's premise here is not like that. Gemara's premise is, how could you be meichel it? It's not in play yet.
Right.
You can be meichel something that's in play, but the knas is not in play. The knas will only be in play once Beis Din imposes it, right?
Not automatic.
It's right. So it says from Nishmin min Adah, and normally Nishmin min Adah means let's bring an objective proof. But here it means, and I'll prove to you that it's not yet in play. I'm proving the premise of my question, not resolving the premise, but proving the premise, which is the Mara Yibun Barchi b'Shem Rav Zira, Yibun Barchi is the name of Zira. Knas ain't bo mishal rishona. Knas is not liable from the moment of the event. Mishal rishona means from the moment of the event. Rather, it's from the time of the court case. The Tziyata we learned over there. The b'yidin ha'shalom ezavi, a woman, if the case of a rape, and she comes to court before her father dies, Harein shel of, then the father inherits the father gets the knas, and Mesav, if the father's no longer alive, Harein shel achim, it goes to the brothers. Now, and the Brisa goes on, although the rest of it is not here. The commentator brings it down. If she was not able to go to court until the father dies, because the father died before they got to court, Harein Shalatzma, then she gets to keep the knas herself. So we see here fundamentally what determines the knas, the timing of court. That's why the father's alive at the time of the court case, it either goes to him or his heirs. If the father is no longer alive at the time of the court case, then it goes to her. So we see that what determines knas? The court. So how can she be moichel when it's not yet hers? Right? It's a very interesting question, right? So says the Gemara, this is continuing again, the premise of the question. If you want to say Knas Kenu Mishor Rishona, the Knas already devolves from the first moment, Harein Shalachim Mishor Rishona, even if the father dies before the court case, it should be already affiliated with him, and even if though he died, it should go to her brothers, not to herself. You have the Brisa there, and that key point, which the Gemara omitted, but the Carbonator brings down, says that if he died before the court case, then at the time of the court case, it goes to her. So we see that the Knas does not become, it doesn't go into play until the time of the actual court case. So actually, Meichelit. So Rava B'Shem Rav Chisda said, you're right. She can't be Meichel Knas. The only thing she can be Meichel is Baishas Ubgam. Now, I'm not sure how she can be Meichel Baishas Ubgam. It's not her Baishas. We just said if there's a father, it's not her Baishas Ubgam. Oh, I see. Sorry, I was babbling. I take that back. It's talking about Baishas Ubgam. Remember, there is no father. We established our mission talking about a Yisayma. She's an orphaness. So she can be Meichel the Baishas Ubgam. But Knas is not Meichel. And it's interesting thing, the Chasam Sofer says, you know why Knas she can't be Meichel? Because the whole concept of Knas is for the point that he seduced her. The point of the Knas is on seduction. The fact that you fell in love with him doesn't eliminate the fact that the Torah said, yeah, but for causing you to fall in love with him, that's what he has to pay you for. So therefore, the Knas, you really can't be Meichel Misvara. It's not just technical, that you can't be Meichel Knas because it hasn't yet devolved upon him until they go to court. But it's also theological. The Knas is imposed for having seduced her. So therefore, how is it possible to be Meichel the Knas? That would be oxymoronic to the very concept of the Knas itself. That's what the Chasam Sofer says on the bottom. Okay? So again, but Michael, even though it says in Mishnah that the Mefata is Potter, but it's really only Potter from Baishas Ubgam, not Potter from the Knas, because she can't be Michael the Knas. Now, that's Rabbi Zeira, who says the Knas is only later on. Rabbi Mona argues, and therefore the Gilin Ephraim takes out the Dalit here in the Rabbi Mona. It has it as Rabbi Mona. Right? Mona not true. Ma'ones chayav, when it says in our Mishnah, and oines is chayav, ba'koyel. So about Knas, Baishas Ubgam, all three. V'amafata Potter, when it says Mafata Potter, min ha'kol, it's from everything. From Knas, Baishas Ubgam. So he obviously argues, right, Mona, and he holds, when does Knas devolve? Immediately. Like I said, with the Yeshiva Shalom this before, Mikanu Laba Ulamafreya. It's true, it becomes implemented at the time of the court case. But the antecedent and the root cause is at the time of the actual deed. And therefore she can be Meichel. It's Meichel all three. Knas Baishas Ubgam. Okay? Rabbi Yovin Omar, Rabbi Yovin said, in the name of, it should be Rabbi Shemi, I don't know where the Reish is missing it, but they both put it in. Everybody puts it in. Rabbi Shemi asked the following. Ma'u ones chayav v'amafata potter. It's really a repetition. What does it mean ones chayav v'amafata potter? Does it mean ones chayav b'kol v'amafata potter min ha'osh b'oses b'gam v'chayav b'knas? Is there such a dichotomy? In other words, it's really reiterating what Ramona said. Can you say when it says ones is chayav in everything. But the father's potter, that means that he's only potter from Baishas Ubgam, but the Knas is chayav because she can't be Meichel that, like Rabbi Zira said. How is it possible to make such a distinction? Says the Gemara. Now the last few lines, the last three lines here, everybody goes crazy on, and the Gilin Ephraim actually just makes wholesale changes in the last three lines in order to make them work out. But I'm going to try and make it work out as written here, and I don't know if it'll work or not, but let's try. Says this is actually trying to answer Rabbi Simi's question, Rabbi Ami's question, and Rabbi Simi. For Rabbi Akiva, oines from fata potim nakol. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says ones and fata are ones and fata are potter Rabbi Akiva is the one who says, you have to read the parentheses. Rabbi Akiva could say this. Rabbi Akiva should say that the onus is potter from boshus b'kam but chay b'knas, because that which it says I'm a fata potter min hakol ha'id Rabbi Yosef Glili. That's going like Rabbi Yosef Glili. In other words, we said at the top of the Yom, Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that there is no knas at all by a girl who has no father. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says it's even knas by a girl who has no father. So what the Gemara is saying is that we can make such a distinction. We could say that you know what I want to now I'm thinking out loud. Let me expand a little bit now on what I think the way to read the Gemara is. Let me say it outside. First, we had Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Zira says that the knas only becomes chayiv at the time of going to court. So therefore, it should be Michael the knas. She can't be Michael the knas. Then we had Rabbi Mana, who argues that the knas is immediate, and therefore you can be Michael the knas, right? So now we're going back to Rabbi Zira, and we're asking Rabbi Sima's question. Rabbi Zira is a technical one. He's not asking on the lumdus. He accepts the lumdus that knas only begins at Hamad B'din. And therefore, you can't be Moichel Knas. He's asking a technical question, how does that work out? The Mishnah doesn't seem to draw a distinction. The Mishnah sounds like there is nothing. Mefatis Potter Min HaKol. So I accept your lumdus, but how am I supposed to read the Mishnah? So he says, I'll tell you how to read the Mishnah. Our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yosef Glili. Rabbi Yosef Glili holds anyway a mefat that doesn't, by a case where a girl has no father, there's no knas. So it's not because of the mechila that there's no knas, because you're right, you can't be meichel knas. Alright, we're going to premise Rabbi Zira, there's no mechila knas, because the knas is not yet chayiv. So our Mishnah, which patters from knas and both began, it's taka true, our Mishnah patters from all three. But our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yosef Glili, because Rabbi Yosef Glili will allow to be patrin both to become immediately, because they devolve immediately. But knas, it's not that that's why she's meichel there. Knas, remember, still not throwing enough information at you. She's talking about a Yisayma, a girl who's an orphan, right? So everything is up to her. The Boshis B'Gam would go to her. So she can be meichel the Boshis B'Gam immediately. What about the knas? Knas, you can't be meichel. True, but our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yosef Glili. Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that even though you can't be meichel the knas, but nonetheless there is no knas by a girl who has no father. You would be right like Rabbi Akiva. Like Rabbi Akiva, if you hold you can't be meichel the knas, that this Yisayma would have to get a knas. It would be necessary to say so. But our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yosef Glili, who holds that nevertheless, despite the fact that theoretically she can't be meichel the knas, but she's a Yisayma, she has no knas anyway, so therefore we could taka works out with fatas potter min hakol for two different reasons. One, because she's meichel the Boshis B'Gam, the other because she cannot get knas and she has no father. That works out very nicely. Okay, so the way to read it, the last two lines is, Har Rabbi Akiva, Mero Ines Potter Min HaBoshis B'Chai B'Knas. Rabbi Akiva taka would say, Ones Potter Min HaBoshis and Chai B'Knas, and that's, well, actually it should be here, Mefata. Even according to the way I just read it, should be Mefata is Potter Min HaBoshis B'Chai B'Knas. I would have to change that word. Mefata is Potter Min HaBoshis B'Chai B'Knas. Mefata, Potter Min HaKol, our mission sounds like a Mefata is Potter altogether. Hayid Rabbi Yosef Glili here. That's why Rabbi Yosef Glili holds that it's because of a separate reason that Mefata is Potter from Knas, not because she's meichel, because she cannot, but rather because the halacha is that Yisrael doesn't get one. And we will stop here for today.